Hello beautiful people, this is Krishna and welcome to another tutorial of CodeEra. So in today's tutorial we will be learning how to create cards using JavaScript. So especially we will be building these kind of cards. I know these might be the simple cards that you have already seen on any of my tutorials or tutorials on any other channels. But the speciality of today's video is that we are totally going to create all these cards and their elements using just JavaScript. Actually, we are just going to use a single element into our HTML file because this tutorial is completely based on how to create elements on JavaScript. So let me just show it to you. So here you can see that this is the single element in our HTML file that we are going to use in this tutorial, and rest of the code is completely fetched from the script.js file, which is the JavaScript file. And obviously we are going to use the CSS for styling these cards. So without any further delay, let's begin with our tutorial. So now let me just open up my VS Code editor and then let me just show you what all things we are going to use. So this is the first image, the second one, and the third one. And along with that, here is an index.html file, a script.js file, and a style.css file. It must be the style. Okay, so now let's begin with our HTML. So let me just close this tab and just type in exclamation and enter. So this will give up a boilerplate for our kickstart. So here in the title I am going to write creating cards using JavaScript, and then I am going to create an element with the class name cards container. Okay, so we are done with it. So let me just open up my live server. So the shortcut key for live server is Alt+L. So here you can't see any of the images or the cards just because we have just created an element. We haven't yet included the things into this element. So first let me include the script.js file. Okay, so now we will jump into our script.js file, and from here we will begin by creating the elements. So for the first, I will create some of the arrays with let cards is equals to an empty array which will store my cards, let heading is equals to empty array which will store my headings, and also and then image div which will store my image elements, and then another image which will store my images. Next, as I mentioned, I need to give headings, that means the name that we have used for our cards. So I will create an array by the name names and then give an empty element for the first. Then let's continue with it. Detective, then comes the cowboy, and at the last the hacker. And then another array which will store my images. Here also I will create an empty element and then pass on the image1.png, image2.png, and also the last one, that is image3.png. So by this we have created 4 empty arrays and 2 arrays which are storing our names and also the images. So next I will use a for loop where I will initialize the I to 1 and then which should extend itself to I less than or equals to 3, and then the increment of I. Inside this, first we will target by creating the cards. So I will create the cards of I. This will say document dot create element, that is a div element. So this particular line will create a div element, and then we need to set an attribute to these cards. So I will use the set attribute property and set the class to a single individual card. Then I will also set an ID by using the same technique, that is the set attribute property, and pass on the parameters like ID, and here I will use the backticks so that I can use the value of the I here too. So here what we have done is we have created a div element, we have passed on a class with the name card, and then an ID with its respective ID. That will be like, if it's I equals to 1, so it will be like card 1, and further it goes on. So next we will create the div element for our images, for which we have already created an empty array, that is image div of I is equals to, so I will just copy the code from here and paste it right here. So it will also do the same thing, and then assign it an ID with the set attribute property, that is ID. Here also I am going to use the backticks technique, that is image dollar braces and I. So we have created the div elements for our images and set their IDs. Next we will further move on by creating the headings, and the same thing goes in here, that is copy and paste. So I will change it right now. Here I need to change the parameter value, that is h1, as we are creating the headings, and then here from image div to heading, and set the attribute to head. I will set the ID to head, and then some values to these headings by using the inner HTML property, and set them to names of I. So whatever the value of I it will be, so let's say if it's names of I1, then the detective will be passed, and if it's the names of 3, then the hacker will be passed. So far so good. We have created the card, the image elements, and then at the last the headings. So now it's time to append these elements one after the other so that they can be viewed onto our browser. So first I will append the image div into my card by using the append child property, and then by passing in the image of I. That means div element of the image will be passed first element of the images array, and which will be continued. So here let me just write in some comment, appending images to the images div. So let me just comment it out here. Then the same thing with the cards of I dot append child, and then I will append the image div to this element, and then also append the heading, so first let me complete this thing, then I will show it to you what I am actually is doing. So appending images div to the cards. So comment this, and then here headings to the cards, commenting right here. So as I have shown you that those individual cards had an image and an heading, that is the name for that particular card. These were the cards. Let's say this is the single card that will be placed into our website. So this particular card is appending an heading and also an image div which already has an image inside it. So first the image will be placed and then the heading. So at the last we need to do another thing, that is placing all these elements into this particular element. So actually it must be the ID and not the class. So I will just copy this from here and then paste it here, and then use the same property, that is the append child, and append all of my cards into this element. So let me just use the comment line here too. So Control V. So let me just save it. Okay, so nothing is visible right here. So let me just check what was the mistake I did. Okay, so here we have included the image element, but here we haven't created any images. So let me just do it. Image of I, as we have already created an array, that is img, and then let me just copy this from here and then here, and then change this div to img, which will create an image element, and then pass on the source, that is by writing dot src is equals to images of I. So let me just save it and then okay. So now the things are visible on our web page. So now all these elements are being created using our JavaScript. So now it's time to style these elements using the CSS. So now let me just include the link to my style.css file, and then let's begin by styling these elements. So by using the asterisk, I will set the margin to 0 and padding to 0, and also box sizing to border box to each and every element of my web page. Then I will set a default font size, which is 62.5%, and then set the background of my body to white smoke. Next, let's target this cards container. Let me just swipe it here, and then hash as it's an ID. So I will set the display to flex, and then position to absolute, and then move it 50% from the top and 50% from the left. So now they are not clearly set. So also use the transform property, so I can set them at the center of my web page. And okay, sorry, my bad. So Control S to save. So now they are at the center from the vertical and from also the horizontal axis. Now let's set the size of these images. So I will target the card of image. So I will set the height to 20 rem and give them a margin of 2 rem and 0 from x-axis. So now they are set. Then we will go to our heading, that is h1, and set the font size to 2.5 rem and give a little bit of letter spacing so that they can looks nice. And then also color, it's actually a dark blue color, which I am going to use the hex code, that is 020 3 4 7. Control S to save. So now they are set. The last thing that is remaining is setting them to the center by using the textMan property to the center, and then also giving the font family to monospace. Okay, so now they are well and good. So now I just need to target my cards. So let's do it by targeting the class, that is .card, and I will give it a padding of 2 rem from the y-axis and 3 rem from the x-axis, and then a margin of 2 rem, and then background to white, and then box shadow to 0 from the x-axis, 1 rem from the y-axis, 2 rem of blur radius, minus 2 rem of spread, and the color to gray. So now these cards are looking fine. Another thing that is the border radius, and I will set it to the 5 pixels. Then as we hover on these elements, I need to get a cursor and some transition effect. So first I will set the cursor property to pointer, see, and then I will use the transition and then set the transition to 0.5 seconds, and then target what need to be happened when we hover on these elements. So I want these elements to transform and scale a little bit, that is scale to 1.05 of its original size, then also to increase the box shadow by setting it to, like, I will just change up the value from the y-axis, that is 1.5 rem. Control S to save, and let's just check it out. Okay, so now they are perfectly working well. So let me just shrink them so they are not actually responsive. So we can do it by just using another line of code, that is flex wrap to wrap. So here we go. Sorry. So now these cards are actually responsive. I think I missed another thing, that is setting the width to 100% and also justifying them to the center. Okay, so now they are set. So let me just check by reducing the size of my browser. Okay, so now they are responsive. So this was the thing that I wanted to show you in this tutorial. So as you have seen that all these elements were created by using just the JavaScript, and we haven't used any more elements other than this cards container into our HTML file. So that's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I want you to like and share this video, and if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I want you to hit that subscribe button and also press that bell icon so you get notified whenever a new video is uploaded on my channel. We will meet into the next video. So till then, take care, bye bye, and keep learning, keep coding. See ya.